All right, sorry about that, guys. Got a little bit of a slower or later start on the YouTube live video here, so I apologize for that. But we do have a good tournament this week. Obviously, it's the Memorial Tournament. It's going to be the first tournament that we can really, truly go out and attack. I do have a new setup going. It should be a better setup, but it's my first time using it. So if there are any glitches or any errors coming in, like we just saw with the microphone there, let me know, and I'll get that corrected right away. I already have some questions coming in. I do want to say I got the laptop over here and the webcam right here. And I got my stats right below me. So if I'm looking over at my laptop, I'm looking at your guys' questions. So that's kind of going to be how it goes for this one. And I'll get my setup figured out a little bit better next week. But got a quick question here. Koepka, Rose, bounce back week. It could definitely happen. I know with Rose, I'm more worried. It's just... He does have good course history, 13th at T6, a miscut as well. The stats have been getting better, but you look at his ball striking, it's not that good. It's not like it once was. It's 142nd. His greens in regulation is around 200, and his bogey avoidance is around 200 as well. So I do worry about that. Yes, he was looking better recently, but I would rather just pay up for Tiger right there or go down to Ricky if I can on DraftKings. You can go down a little bit lower, go up a little bit higher for some better plays as well. Brooks, I think, will be a contrarian play, a low ownership play because you got Jon Rahm, Xander, and Tiger right around him. So I do get that from that standpoint, but I just don't really like him as a play. Kind of for the same things I just echoed with Justin Rose. I think if those two do make the cut, they're going to fall off eventually just because this is not a course that really fits their game. And I do think that the rough is going to be raised up a little bit more this week, so that is a little bit worrisome this week. We got another question from Smoking Guns. Would you rather play Hadwin or English and Cash? So I have ended up on this thought process quite a bit there as well. I do like both of those plays quite a bit, as you probably know. For me, I've been ending up on Hadwin just because he does have that course history. You know, when you check all the boxes, course history, recent form, and then also stat fit, when those three come together like they are with Hadwin, that just means they're a stellar play. Now, English has shown a lot more upside, so I do favor English in GPPs, but for Hadwin, for cash, definitely roll with Hadwin. Then you guys know the drill. If you have any more questions, let's get them in the chat as well. I will be doing a basic cover here. I already got into some questions, but I know on the podcast, Hazy and I talked about two things really. The need to hit the fairway. And I do want to just say that podcast that we had last week, we got pretty animated about our thoughts about the TV coverage. If you haven't given that a listen, you should. It's like the first 10 minutes are pretty much just gold. So give that a listen if you guys are interested in the betting side of it. It's pretty solid. But we talked about two things. The need to hit the fairway this week because last week it did seem like the rough was a little bit longer than they let on than we originally suspected. And then also with the green playing the way it is, it should be a little bit slower. And the thought process there is, does that affect golfers at all putting? Like, will it make them better or worse? And really, it's tough to know for sure. I think it'll vary between each golfer that played the previous week. I know sometimes when I golf on a course and they change kind of the lengths or the speeds of the green are a little bit different for whatever reason, whether they trimmed it, they put some sand on it or whatnot. The God forbidden air raid greens or whatever. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder. It really just comes down to the player and how they're putting. If they can adjust to the field, they should be fine, but it's really hard to predict that. It's almost like I'm leaning more towards some of the players that have good course history here that didn't play last week, but obviously if they played last week, they know where they need to hit the ball. So, I don't know, just kind of something to worry about. I think the bad putters will, be bad like normal, and the good putters will continue to be good. We do have some more questions coming in, so I'll read those off. Hey, thanks, Billy. I do appreciate that about the betting podcast. It's, it's a nice start for it. We're on our third episode. We'll probably try to go live on that soon here as well, whether it's next week or the following week. I will try to go live on that as well. So, yeah, for me, I would rather go Nick Taylor in cash. We saw him make the cut in his last two appearances here at this course. He's a good stat fit. I do really think the reason that he fell off last week was just because it was his first full round of 18 holes. He's a good stat fit. He's top 25 in total driving, ball striking. He's top 30 in greens and regulation and total putting. So he's a guy that grades out as someone that should make the cut, especially at his price point. That's a great play. Wiesberger for me is more of a GPP play. I'm fine with that build. That's kind of a contrarian build there too, Billy. So that does have a lot of upside. Rory and Rahm, they're fine plays. That's the problem with the top end, is that it's absolutely loaded and there's not really going to be a mistake. I think it's just going to be a matter of being more right or being, less wrong, I guess, for example. Hey, David, well, I'll get to Chad's first. My thoughts on M. So I'm fine with. Yes, he's grinding it out right now. He had a 63rd finish last week. He had a T57 finish here in 2019. And yes, the stats are kind of starting to drop. Sanjay M was like an automatic top 5 stat fit each and every week. Now, yes, this field's a little bit more loaded, but he only ranks out as a top 15 stat fit. And I think that's because his game has been lacking. Now, I do think he'll eventually figure it out, but maybe he just needs to take a week or two off to figure that out. I don't mind him as a play. I do like that price point. I do feel like he has more upside than someone like Kuchar or Neiman, but I do feel like those two are a little bit more safe this week. All right, David, get into your question. First of all, you don't have to worry about if your cash build is chalky or not. Really, you don't have to worry about a build being chalky or not at all right now, especially I tweeted this out earlier today. Pretty much there's been a low amount of 6-for-6 lineups that have, or that low amount of lineups have had 6-for-6 across the cut line. And I think that's mostly due to a lot of things, but the T65 and ties, there's a lot more casual golf fans coming in here, so don't worry about it being chalk. The goal is to get 6-for-6 across the cut line, and if you do that, you're going to cash. Most of the times if you get 5 out of 6 across the cut line, you're going to cash. So really don't worry about if it's chalky. I'm looking at your lineup here. Answer, Berger, Cantley, Hovland, Norlander, Glover. Yeah, that's perfectly fine with me. I do worry about Norlander and Glover just kind of regressing back a little bit to their selves, but it is a great course for them. Those two both great out as plays. That should make the cut. I know when I've trusted those guys, that's when it's been bad for me, but I do like those plays quite a bit. I'm going to be playing them this week as well. And for chalky value, and even Lucas Glover, just as an FYI, I don't see them being like too crazy just because that 7K range this week is loaded like it was last week. And then value plays are never, too chalky as is. I think if Glover makes the cut, he has a strong chance to top 20 there, David. If you're doing a top 30 bet, I'd rather do that, but I don't mind it. Got Bailey looking to add one more play, Fitz, Kuchar, and Leishman. I think I would go Kuchar, Fitz, and Leishman. I don't really like Leishman this week. I don't really, he could flash some upside. He's had a 5th finish here last year, but last week he missed the cut, and he just hasn't been playing well recently, so I don't really like him too much. Kuchar definitely should make the cut. He's had relatively good course history. 3 out of the last 4 cuts he's made here. His game has been getting a little bit better as well. He's made 2 straight cuts. Norlander, I think Norlander's a good value play. It's more or less his price point is good. That's what makes him a good play. Now, if he was priced in the 7K range, you wouldn't really touch him, but it's just his price point what makes him a good play. Even if he misses the cut, it shouldn't hurt you too much as long as your other players make the cut. Who do you think will be the lowest owned 9 to 10K range play? Let me go back up to it. So it's very tough. Probably DJ. Just because Bryson and JT, obviously they have great course history. Bryson's been a stud. JT has 3 out of 4 top 10 finishes here. And then Rory is Rory. We know Rory. And then DJ's just priced a little bit lower. And then you get down to Colin Moore, Cantley, Webb, Victor Hovland, Hideki. Those are all going to be great plays. Then I think Brooks would be the next lowest owned. Especially with the way Brooks kind of looked last week. I think that might scare people away. Working on that 6-for-6 over that chalk. Yeah, there are some leverage spots this week, but just don't go too crazy with it. If you're making a bunch of GPP lineups, do some switches, do some changes in your lineup on purpose from someone that might be chalky to someone that might be less owned. That does make sense. Yeah, so Wiesberger, we touched on that on the betting podcast as well. He is definitely too cheap for being a world-class player. My only worry with him is that players that are coming over from overseas typically take a little bit longer to get used to U.S. tournaments for some reason, but he definitely is too cheap. I do get the GPP upside with that. I just don't think you should be playing him in cash. There's plenty of other plays right around his price point that are pretty solid as well, so I get it, but I wouldn't be forcing anyone into a build, especially like that this week. I like Troy Merritt a little bit more for upside. You got Chads and Zach Johnson right there. Brian Stewart burned us last week, but I think we can go back to the well this week if we can just start dropping some putts. He couldn't drop a single one last week. Stewart would be a fine play as well. But some of the other questions I got asked earlier were about weather advantage. Now, that doesn't affect my weekly long lineup, especially this week. Some weeks it might if the weather is like, you can tell there's going to be a clear cut, tee time advantage. It does look like for the showdown slate, Thursday morning is going to be the way to go. But you never know when a rain delay or weather delay can come into play, whether that's for the whole evening or for a few hours. Sometimes that can help a golfer out or sometimes that can hurt them. We saw last week that the course played a lot softer after the weather delay, or one of the weather delays, I should say. And it actually got some people out of the rhythm that they were in earlier. So it kind of goes both ways. But I definitely think you should be favoring the Thursday morning tee time if you are doing a showdown slate, and then probably for Friday morning as well. But that's something you guys have to check the weather report on before. If you are trying to do a weather advantage, definitely just look at the showdown slate for that mostly. Oh, yeah, so people ask me a lot about John Ron, JT, and Rory. I kind of already touched on that quite a bit. If you are trying to get... See, there's so many great plays. I really don't think we have to worry about ownership too much, okay? It shouldn't really matter just because the whole Bryson to Tiger is a great play. Heck, Bryson to Abraham Manser is a great play, minus like Justin Rose. Other than that, they're all great plays. So really don't worry about ownership too much just because none of those plays should be wrong. It's pretty much going to be unlucky if those plays are wrong. Now, yes, I don't really like Brooks too much. I worry about DJ and Rory's driving accuracy and total putting. But we know those guys are world-class players. They could just go on top 10 and, no one would bat an eye. And then I know a lot of people have asked about lineup construction, like where do you attack this slate? It's really what you feel comfortable with and what your style of game is. I know a lot of people are trying to do studs and duds approach this week. Yeah, you can definitely do that. Just know that's going to be a lot more risky this week just because you're going to pay up for some studs. And then, yeah, there are some great value plays, but they're value plays for a reason. There's some value plays that I think have decent GPP upside, and there's some value plays that I think have decent cut equity, but without any upside. So they're down there for a reason, but you can definitely do that. You just got to hope that your top-end players get a top 10. I do think the fair and balanced approach is going to be the way to go in cash and in GPPs quite a bit, just because there's a ton of great lineup spots. I know I've ended up with that like 2 in the 8K range, 2 in the 9K range or so, and then like 2 in the 7K range. That's kind of been my lineup path, and I do say that quite a bit. Lineup path does matter quite a bit. David's wondering about Billy Hull. Yeah, I like Billy Hull quite a bit this week. The problem with him is, once again, he's just priced right where a bunch of other great players are. But Billy Horschel, he hasn't really played bad this year. His missed cuts, he played pretty well. He just didn't play good enough. He's had 2 top 10 finishes here in the last 2 years. The 2 years prior to that, he had 2 missed cuts. That does worry you a little bit, but he's a great stat fit. He should be a player that does make the cut and can hold some top 20 upside. As price point, I like that. I just don't love him as a play this week, like I did a few weeks ago. I'll get to that question in just a second there, Andrew. Let me get a sip here. So I do want to talk about the FanDuel plays here. A couple of them stood out. Ooh, Tyler Duncan's price is wrong. Let me get that fixed. It should be a 7. All right, let's get Tyler Duncan's price point fixed. I apologize for that. Boom. Sorry. But Tyler Duncan did stand out for me as a value play on FanDuel. I mean, 7-6, pretty much minimum price. He's a guy that should make the cut. That really does free up a lot on FanDuel, because FanDuel, you can typically fit another stud into your build. So I don't mind that. If he misses a cut, that's fine. Then Hadwin, Sanjay, Strowman, and Doc Redmond, they're all kind of cheap. There's a lot of decent 9K price points on FanDuel, I noticed. So if you guys are just looking at FanDuel, just know that 9K range is absolutely loaded. If there's a player in there that you like, you should definitely load up on that range on FanDuel. So going to begin into a couple more questions here. Is Harris English going to be a core play? Harris English is not going to be a core play this week for me, but he's very close, and if you have him as a core play, I'm perfectly fine with that. The only problem with Harris English this week is that he doesn't have that course history. There's a lot of other players that checked all the boxes: course history, recent form, and stat fit. Harris English only checks somewhat recent form. He did have that miscut, in his first event back, but we know that was probably just because it was the long break. He came back and played the second round pretty well. I really like Harris English as a play this week. He just wasn't checking all the boxes for me to be a core play this week. He is a great stat fit, though. How much do you like Kisner this week? So I don't really like Kisner this week. I don't know. So Kisner gets the barstool bump is what I'm going to call it now. People like to play him, and I just don't see it. I'll name some players right here, right around his price point range that are 300 or less. Got Ian Poulter, Kevin Streelman, Doc Redman, Billy Horschel, Corey Connors, Adam Hadwin, Cameron Champ, and Harris English are all plays that I like better than Kevin Kisner. I just don't see the lineup path to get onto Kevin Kisner. Yes, he's made 3 straight cuts here: T41, T74, T6. That's fine. If he had decent recent form and his stats were a little bit better, I'd be fine with him as a play. I just don't love it this week. Let's see here. Yeah, so this is more of a ball striking course, second shot course. You do have to worry about greens and regulation, which is a key stat this week. I am looking at bogey avoidance this week as well, because I do think the rough is going to be more penalizing this week. So we are looking at that. This is a strokes gain tee to green course as well. You see the players that really excel in that do really well this week, but you do have to hit your drives accurately. Any interest in Paul Casey? Just in general, I don't mind Paul Casey. I think he's a fine play. Obviously, we worry about Paul Casey with his putter. He hasn't played this course in the last 4 years, but he's pretty much just a poor man's version of Gary Woodland. I don't think he has as much upside, or as much likelihood to make the cut, but he's priced accordingly. I do like him as a play this week. He has been a cut maker. He typically is a cut maker. So Paul Casey is a fine play no matter what the site. Hadwin or Streelman for GPPs. He has a lot more upside. We've seen that recently. Hadwin for cash for sure. You fading anyone in the 9.5 plus K? So yeah, I am fading some of them. It's just more or less they weren't as good of plays for me. JT, Rory, DJ, Rahm's the one I might regret fading. I think I will regret fading him. He had a T27 finish last year, and he actually grades out as a top 4 play in my model this week, and he ranks out second best as a stat fit this week. That might be the one I regret. I just want to see one more week with him. I don't think he's going to win this week, so I'm not really too worried about it. I just think the cut likelihood for the other players right around him is a little bit better. Oh, I'm also fading Brooks, by the way. Hao Tong Lee, let me pull him up on the stat sheet here. I didn't have him in the write-up this week. See, I just like Troy Mayer a little bit better and Brian Stewart a little bit better. I'm not trying to overextend myself too much in the value range this week. Norlander I like, Tyler Duncan I like, so I just don't want to overextend myself too much in that price point range. All right, going to get into the Yahoo plays really quickly as well. So Doc Redman at $20 on Yahoo really stood out. If you guys are trying to get some Doc Redman, I think Yahoo would be the place to do it. Just an incredible stat fit. Just too low of a price for him on Yahoo. I'll pull up his stats here. He missed the cut here in his one and only start. That's fine. But he's the top 15 stat fit. He ranks top 15 in total driving ball striking and also in bogey avoidance or driving accuracy. Sorry, bogey avoidance is top 50. But he's just a strong play at that price point. He has shown some great recent form. He's made 5 straight cuts. Xander, I like at his price point. That's pretty cheap, $39 or $38 from him. Hadwin's really cheap as well. That's a good price point. And then Berger, Hovland are solid price point plays as well. Redman or Glover? That's tough. That's kind of a shoulder shrug. Probably Glover just because of the recent form and the course history. He's quietly checking all the boxes. I wish he had like a top 30 finish here in the last 3 or 4 years. He's had 3 straight like T52 finishes, T52, T52, T45. That's not great. I wish there was a little bit, better quality finish mixed in there, but he's looked really good since break, 4 straight top 20 finishes. He ranks out as a top 30 stat fit. So he's not as good of a stat fit as Redmond. So, if both of them are on their game like they have been, I think Redmond will hold a little bit more upside. But Glover is more likely to make the cut. So got a question about Answer. So I do like Answer a decent amount this week. The only problem that I have with Answer this week really is where he's priced. Yeah, Berger and Woodland right there that I like a little bit more. Woodland kind of checking all the boxes. Daniel Berger just been a stud this whole year. Great stat fit. Daniel Berger could easily top 10. Gary Woodland can easily top 10. Answer's course history is slightly worrisome. Only a T65 and a T57. But hey, they're made cuts. You do want to see that. It kind of goes back to Lucas Glover. I do want to see a better finish than that, but it's not a bad thing that they're making cuts. And then Ricky, I like Answer has more GPP upside, I think, than Ricky. But for, cash, I would rather go Ricky. But Answer I do like quite a bit. Obviously, he's been a cut maker. He's just been in great recent form. Answer's a great stat fit, top 15. He almost ranks out top 10 in my model this week as well. So not a bad play. I do like Answer quite a bit. I've ended up on Answer a ton this week. All right, we're getting a lot more questions. And so any love for Shane Lowry? Shane Lowry, I didn't end up on at all. I do get the appeal for him. That's kind of one of those players where, you can't fit everyone into your player pool. He was one of the players that, were in the 10 players or so that just missed the player pool. Fine with that play. I'm not going to talk you out of it. Thoughts on Ryan Palmer? That's actually the exact same thing as Shane Lowry there. I just, he's a good stat fit. I don't mind the play. Both those players, if you had them in your player pool, I'm not going to talk you out of it. I just like some other plays a little bit better at their price point range. So I do get it if you're playing them. Perfectly fine with it if you're playing them. Let me see here. There's a lot more questions coming in. So is there a player that you would consider a trap play? Not that I'm on, really. Let's see here. I'll try to find one for you. I think Tony Finau could be a trap play just because he's getting a ton of hype. He was on PGA Tour Live today. He got a lot of hype just because of his ball speed, video on Twitter and Instagram. I think that could be a trap play for a lot of people. He's just not the most accurate driver. His driving accuracy is 182. He's not that good of a putter. I do really like Tony Finau as a player, but this just isn't the course for him. I do think that could be the trap play this week just because I think people are going to get onto him a little bit more than they should just because of that hype. People forgetting about Berger. Yeah, so it's kind of weird. So Berger, I made a lineup where I'm like, let's just go with the 9 to 5 guys pretty much. So it was Webb Simpson, Xander, Berger, and English. And then obviously Woodland a little bit, Nick Taylor, and whatnot. Obviously, you can't fit them all in there, but between Berger, Webb, and Harris English, those 3 guys are priced at all different pricing tiers, and they all have a great upside to top 10 or top 20. Obviously, Webb could easily top 10 once again. Berger's been a stud, probably top 15 finish for him, and then Harris English should top 20, theoretically. So I've been on those 2 quite a bit this whole year, so I do like them. When I go back to Ann this week, I wasn't on Benny Ann at all last week. I didn't really get the appeal for him. He ranks out as a guy that should be right around the cut line, which is never a good thing. And he's priced up pretty high last week. There's other quality plays right around him. Now I get it. He had good course history, and yes, theoretically that should help him make the cut this week. But, without the good recent form, without the good stats, it's just not enough for me to play him. Once again, Ian Poulter, Kevin Streelman, Doc Redmond, they're all right there. You have some quality plays priced up a little bit more than him, so do worry about that. So let's see here. Simpson or Hovland? Yeah, I think you can't go wrong with either of them. I've been defaulting to Webb. Webb's just been a stud this year. I think Webb could win this week. Webb's lowest stat this week is 20th. From the key stats that we're looking at. 20th is driving accuracy. Everything else is pretty much top 10 for stats that we're looking at. That's very rare, okay? He should theoretically, top 10. Now it's golf. Anything can happen. One bad shot can cost you. But I don't mind Victor Hovland as well. Obviously had the 3rd place finish last week. He's also like a top 10 stat fit. So both of those are quality plays. I like Webb a little bit more. Streelman or Hadwin? For me, it's Hadwin. I do like Streelman's upside here. It's really up to you, kind of what you're trying to look for with that. Yeah, for hitting the fairway, I think that's going to be key for everyone. Anyone could have a bad, driving or, just accurate week or bad accuracy week and kind of just be screwed this week. We saw that with a couple of the players last week, especially early on. It can kind of cost you early on if you're accurate and not being able to get things going. Am I high or low on Billy Horschel? I'm in the middle. I'll probably be right on his ownership for, his projected ownership. Probably won't be overweight or underweight on him, just, even keel. I think he's a fine play. He's a great, I don't want to say great GPP play. He's a good GPP player. He's a little bit risky, but if he does make the cut, he does have some great top 10 upside. I don't think he's going to go on and win, but he does have great top 10 upside, so I don't mind Billy Horschel. Safe to run Poulter again this week. I feel like Poulter is just playing with fire. It's just like he's going to burn you eventually, just because it's very rare that someone like Poulter, where the stats aren't matching up to what he's doing on tour, eventually that's just going to burn you. But if you've been playing Poulter, keep playing him. That's kind of my normal strategy. Is like the players that have got you there, been successful for you. You don't really want to quit them. So I'm perfectly fine with it. He had a T5 finish last week. Obviously, he's been putting insane, and he's been playing a lot better recently too. Trap play is Leishman. Chris Blake wants to take Hovland over Webb this week. It's tough to say. Honestly, it's very close. I like Webb a little bit more, but I can see the appeal for Hovland. Emmert here is worried about the burnout with Hovland. I could see that, but he is a younger guy. Typically, the younger guys don't burn out as much. I don't know. It's just a weird thing, but it's tough to say if he's going to feel the burnout. The only thing that could possibly worry me with Hovland was kind of the mental breakdown that he had on Sunday. He just wasn't really taking it too seriously, and it's a little bit worrisome. Oh, man, in a single entry GPP, is it okay to play a cash type lineup? Your cash lineup should be one of your best lineups, or not, if not your best lineup. Statistically speaking, my cash lineup is always one of my best lineups that week, if not the best week. More times than not, it is my best week because I'm focused on getting 6 or 6 across the cut line. And if they're doing that, they're accruing points throughout the weekend. And if you're doing that, it's going to be more successful. The only reason that you should deviate from your cash build is just to try to get a little bit more upside or to factor in some, variance, which there was a lot more variance early on in the season than there's going to be in weeks going forward. So yeah, enter your cash build into your single entry GPP lineups. It should be your best lineup. Thoughts on Sergio Neiman? I do like both of them a decent amount. Perfectly fine with them. I think I have them both as like mid-exposure plays, but if you have them a little bit higher, I wouldn't blame you. They should be lower owned as well because of the players that are priced right around them. Yeah, so Chris, Webb has missed 3 out of his last 7 cuts here. That's fine, but you can't look at data from further than 4 years out pretty much. You could look at 2016, but the more you go back, the less relevant the data is. He's had the T67 finish here in 2017. Not great, but this is the best Webb has ever played in his life. So, I get it, but all great plays there. Patrick Cantlay, Webb, Hovland, Hideki, all great plays. Yeah, I like Rahm too there. Rock. I don't really know how to say the last part, but he's a solid play. He's going to be one of the players I might be worried about that I wasn't on this week that I probably should have been. Oh, I didn't see the Straka question. I'm sorry. So Straka, I think I originally had him as like a mid-exposure play, and then I kept diving into a little bit deeper, and I think I just ended up with him not making the player pool, just missing out. He had the T14 finisher last week, which, obviously that's solid. If that were going to be this week's finish, it would probably finish around like T30 just with the quality of players that are in this week that compared to last week. The problem with him is he does grade out as someone that should make the cut. But I think like Lucas Glover, Nick Taylor, Harris English, all guys that are like right around his price point range are a little bit better plays. I feel like he was going to be a little bit more popular than he should be this week, and that's kind of why I'm off of him. But that's going to be a player. Like I said, he just missed out on my player pool. If you're going to be on him, that's fine. Don't want to talk you off of it. Yeah, so putting can come and go. I'm just a little bit worried with Poulter. Sabatini, I am not on. David thinks Seb is a good pump play. Yeah, I agree. Fine pump play, but I just think there's other better options right around his price point range. All right, so thoughts on 3AK guys. Yeah. So honestly, I've had a bunch of lineups this week. I went, pretty hard this week with my lineups. I would say the one that you just mentioned, where 3 8K guys and 1 9K guy, is kind of my norm. If not, it's gonna be like 2 8K guys and like 3 really strong 7K players I like. That lineup construction is perfectly solid, especially in a tournament like this where fair and balanced approach should be the safest approach, just because, in the AK range, or if you want to start with Tiger too, whatever, that's fine. Tiger's a great play, but you got Ricky, Daniel Berger, Gary Woodland, Abraham Answer, all great plays. Sanjay should make the cut. Fitzpatrick's been just a cut maker this whole year. Matt Kuchar should make the cut. I do worry about Patrick Reed and Tony Finau, but we're not going to be shocked if they make the cut as well. By default, in higher, caliber tournaments like this week, you could just simply make your cash build just by doing no research and just putting the mid, 8K players into your player pool, and you're going to be golden more times than not for a cash build. JT Poston thoughts? No, I'm not on JT Poston this week. I'm going to try to find him. He had a T52 finish here last year. You look at his total driving and ball striking, long term, it's not that good. Now, I know he has played a lot better recently, and he's been a great putter, great greens and regulation and bogey avoidance recently as well. I don't know, it's just a little bit worrisome for me. I don't mind the price point there. He didn't make the player pool for me. Yeah, Troy Merritt is going to be in my player pool. It's weird. So I only have him in GPP builds. It's kind of, I really like the top end of the lineups that I've had him in. And I'm just like, hey, if Troy Merritt can just do what he's done the last 2 weeks and the last 2 times he's played this tournament, it's going to be very solid. AKA it's going to be like a top 25 finish, which would be very great for, a sub 7K play. Now, he is very risky. I do worry about him making the cut, but he's one of those guys that's pretty streaky where when he's on, he's on. And he does seem like he's on. He's typically a great ball striker and total driver. We haven't really seen that recently, or season long, but we have seen it recently. He is a good putter as well. The play is Streelman. I've ended up on Streelman a little bit more as the week went on for GPP builds, just because he does have that upside. I get it. Thoughts on Chez Reavie? Let's see here. So Chez at his price point, I like him. I do like Zach Johnson right there as well. Chez, obviously, he's been trending in the right direction. So started off horrible since the break, and then he had like a top 74 or T74 finish, which I believe he missed the cut. Then he had like a top 40 finish the week prior to last week, and then he had the top T17 finish, he ranks out as a decent overall stat fit. His game's been getting better, so I don't mind that at that price point. He grades out as someone that should make the cut, and I kind of expect him to make the cut. I do really like Zach Johnson as well. We just touched on Troy Merritt right around that price point. I think Troy Merritt's a little bit better GPP play. All right, guys, I will be closing up here shortly. Got a ton of questions in this week. I do appreciate that. So probably in the next 2 minutes or so. So if you have some more questions, definitely get them in, and then I'll be closing up here shortly. What do I think of Hadwin? Okay, I really like Hadwin as a play. Great cash play. If he just cleans up one bad round that he had last week, it's probably a top 10 finish. 3 out of 4 made cuts here. Great stat fit, top 10. Ranks out really well in my model as a top 10 play as well, so I do like him. For Brendan Steele, I do like quite a bit. I know there's like a little hiccup in the betting podcast. I don't know if we got to Brendan Steele on that. We were recording it, and then I ran out of space on my old laptop, which I'm streaming on my new laptop, which is right here, which I just got like this week. But pretty much my thoughts on Brendan Steele are he's a great bet to top 30. but you don't know if he's going to make the cut. He pretty much reminds me of Kevin Streelman. Pretty much, he's kind of the exact same player as Kevin Streelman, where he's typically a great ball striker, total driver, gonna hit it accurate. You got to worry about the putting here and there, but he's a fine play. I mean, I don't mind it. He's made 3 straight cuts here at this course, 2 straight cuts on the season. He's a fine play. Top 30 staff it this week. Don't mind it. Thoughts on Sink and Stricker? Thanks for asking. I'm from Wisconsin. I always play like one lineup with Steve Stricker in there whenever I do like a ton of lineups. I think that's the first time someone's asked me about Stevie, so I like it. Don't mind him as a play. He's made 3 straight cuts here. He actually had a 22nd finish here last year. Last week he had a T56 finish. Now he's one of those guys where I do think he just wears out naturally with 18 holes with his age, but he's made 2 straight cuts in a row. If there's ever going to be a course where he does well, it's these type of courses. And he knows that, and that's why he's playing this course. So I don't mind Steve. And then also Stuart Sink, I don't mind as well. He's made 2 out of 3 cuts here with 2 top 25 finishes. And he has kind of been pretty solid this year. I do kind of feel like Sink is somewhat of a trap play this week, but the price point's great. So it's like you can't be mad if he misses the cut. It's kind of the right decision at that price point if obviously you're doing the studs and duds approach. Stricker's more of a, you kind of shrug your shoulders and hope he makes the cut, and he should. And then Sink could hold some top 25 upside, which at that price point is absolutely phenomenal. Chef's coming in here talking about the weather. Yeah, the weather could be pretty interesting this week. I don't know. Hadwin was a really good wind player, like early on in the season. I'm not sure. I don't know. It's tough to really gauge how much the weather is going to hurt a player, especially if it's midday. I don't know. It's tough when it's in the middle of a round. If it was before or after a round, you could predict a little bit better. But it's just tough to say when it's in the middle of the round. I don't think we have to worry about Hadwin. Just at his price point, he should make the cut. I do agree that it's somewhat something to look at. Matthias Schwab, a good pump play. I'm not seeing it this week. He could make the cut. I just don't really like it. Jason Day worth playing in cash? No, you do not play Jason Day in cash this week. You can play him in GPPs. I'm perfectly fine with that, but do not play Jason Day in cash. This goes back to, what was it, Scotty Scheffler 3 weeks ago and Kevin Na like last week or whatever. Can't play Jason Day in cash this week. He does have fine course history. You just never know with him. It just doesn't seem like a safe cash play this week. You got Kuchar there, who should make the cut. Paul Casey there, who's been a cut maker. Sanjay, who he's kind of struggling right now, but I would look elsewhere than playing Jason Day in cash. Yeah, Sneds withdrew, I believe. I know he has the little out sticker on his name on DraftKings. Any thoughts on Reavie or Zach Johnson? Yeah, hey, I already talked about those two quite a bit. I think they're pretty solid GPP and cash plays if you want to go that route. I probably wouldn't do that in cash, but I do think that they're both going to make the cut. I think Chaz holds a little bit more upside. I think Zach Johnson holds a little bit more cut equity. Both of them are fine value plays at their price point. I saw you asked about Fitzpatrick as well. I do think Fitzpatrick's a fine play. I didn't end up on him in my player pool for DraftKings. I believe in Yahoo I might have him in a build or two. Been a cut maker, T27 finish here last week. We've got a ton of stuff coming in. Reavie or Zach Johnson. For single entry purposes, I don't know, it's tough because I think Zach Johnson is just, like I said, more cut equity. Chaz Reavie is a little bit more of a GPP play. I'd probably roll with Zach, just strong course history, kind of been grinding out cuts, and he's going to try to grind it out. If his game's not there, he'll try to grind out a made cut for you. Yeah, Chef, it's the price point with Hadwin. If he was in the 8K range, I'd be very hesitant. Well, not very hesitant, but somewhat hesitant. But it's the price point. It's like DraftKings is just trying to force us into that play, and you can't. If he misses the cut, it's still the right play. It's just it would suck if he misses the cut, but it's just the right play at that price point. Is there any amount under 5K that you like your builds at? Maybe. Honestly, this is a week where you could have 700, 800 left over and be fine with it. That was kind of a theme early on in the actual PGA Tour season, and then actually like right after break as well. I do think that this week you probably should shoot for the typical rule, which is 500 or lower, salary left over. So it's a 500, 300, 400, 200, 100. That's kind of what you want. But this field is absolutely loaded. So if there's a lineup that you really like where it's 700, 800 left over and you're happy with it, go with it. I have a couple of builds in there this week where I did that. It's definitely a little bit more contrarian as well, because everyone tries to maximize their lineups. They try to make them as optimal as possible. So I do not mind that approach at all this week if there's a lineup that you specifically really like. Yeah, so I do like the Thursday morning a little bit more, but especially for showdown slates, just attack the showdown slate on Thursday morning, especially if you want to worry about the weather. That's definitely going to be the route to go there, Chris. But it is kind of safer to do, I guess, that the Thursday morning players, but there's just it's not as good of a field in the morning as it is later on, for my player pool, at least I should say. I have a lot more players in my player pool that are doing the Thursday tee time, or the Thursday afternoon tee times, which is a little bit worrisome, but I would just really attack the Thursday morning showdown slate, or, the tomorrow showdown slate with the Thursday morning tee times. Thoughts on Koepka? I'm worried about Koepka. I think he's going to miss the cut. There's just a ton of other better plays right around him that are not as risky. Save Koepka for the WGC. Honestly, I think he is pumped up about that. I think on his Twitter he retweeted it and was like, "Let's go." We got pretty passionate about Koepka on the podcast as well yesterday. Pretty interesting. It would have been great to see him paired up with Bryson this week. All right, but I'm going to be heading out here, guys. Great live stream. Ton of great questions. Really hope that you guys have a good week this week. And as always, let's keep cashing. Thanks, guys.